Just a reminder that this build isn't fully into the endgame, it's more of a build starter and concept that seems very strong, even with bad gear. I'll be covering the pros and cons of this build, attributes, stats to roll for, skills to choose, and the passive points to select for best results. I will also be showing some gameplay, so keep watching and I hope you enjoy the video. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to cover for this build are the pros and cons. So for the pros, this build has really good clear speed, just going from pack to pack, because all you're doing is dashing around as much as you want pretty much, while your minions kind of blow everything up, which also falls into the category of the build being very satisfying. Just watching all the enemies' health kind of slowly drop down, and then when they die, they just explode, leaving behind poison gas on the ground. The build also has really good mobility using Aether Jump, so you can kind of just dash around, and then you also have your rolls, so the build has really good mobility. This build is also very easy to gear up, which also makes me tanky because you're like a necromancer, right? But because you're building material damage, that allows you to build bruiser, which is amazing. So you can build all bruiser items that have good material damage. Now we're going to talk about the cons. I'd have to say, like, this build is not for everyone. Also, the boss clear, I would have to say, is mediocre, but maybe that's because I can't get a staff, which falls into another con in my opinion. I'm having a hard time finding a staff that has the stats that I want, which is like toxic damage, rend, and damage to ailments. I'm having a really hard time finding that because I currently only have a staff with bleed ailment, but I want damage to all ailments on there, and I can't. I'm having a hard time just getting material damage on the item. Now we're going to talk about the summons. There's a few things that bother me about them. Sometimes when you're killing mobs, your summons kind of get like lost or some shit. They just start looking up at the sky, you know, they're just not fighting. They're just standing there in a daze. And it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's kind of annoying because like I'll be using my ability and it's just standing there. Like it'll use its ability, but then it won't auto it. Yeah. So there's that. And also, for some reason, like as you see here, I have like 2 rangers and then I have 2 melee out, but there's no icons or nothing that indicates how many guys I have. That's just a little pet peeve of mine. Again, something the devs can fix. I consider it a con for now because it just bothers me, and it kind of like it makes the build a little unpredictable and a little shitty because your guys like in the middle of the boss fight could just fucking like walk away or some shit. Like I think the AI needs to get fixed personally, but again, it doesn't happen often. The next thing we're going to go into here are gear stats. I'm not going to go over every individual piece. Instead, I'm just going to talk about the stats that you should look for. So if you look at the chest here, it has health and resistance. So usually your chest is going to be your defense item, and you're going to want good health, good resistances on most of your gear, for sure. Wisdom is nice to have too, because it increases my chance of hitting enemies with ailments, which is kind of the entire build. And then if you're looking into the damage side of things, material damage. So if you look at the boots here, 25% material damage, very good to have. Material damage here, material damage here. It's kind of like the main damage stat that you're going to get on all your gear. That really boosts your damage. And then you also want poison and rend damage if possible, which usually you would get on your weapon, right? 2 attacks. Again, very unlucky with that. You also want ailment chance, but again, I got a cult fucking ailment chance on here. It'd be nice to have, you know, just ailment chance if that's a thing, or material ailment chance. But yeah, kind of going on a rant here, but I used all of my rerolls on this staff and got nothing. Absolute shit. It's nice to have the bleed ailment damage, but I want just material damage on there. Like, I just have the physical. I want Rend and Toxic, but yeah, I used probably 20 fucking rerolls on this shit. Like, is it that much to ask for, you know, to get a decent staff? And they're already rare to fucking drop, so like I'll get like 1 or 2 every run. Kind of a pain in the ass.
6.5 hours later.
Kind of went on a rant there. If we look at the attributes, this won't take long. You pretty much just throw most of your points into wisdom and then toughness secondary, so you're not, you know, a little squish ball running around getting one shot. And then if we're gonna look at potions, health, wisdom, done. Like they need to add more potions. Just like it'd be cool to have something like that gives you material damage for like a few seconds or movement speed. Potions like that would be pretty fucking awesome. But currently they don't have that in the game. It'd be cool if they implemented eventually. So now we're going to look at the skills I chose for this build. First thing we're going to look at is Aether Jump. So Aether Jump goes off, I think, the ailment that you're using. So as you see here, it says it can stack when I use it and increases chance of inflicting stasis, which isn't too bad. So it also inflicts bleed and poison because that's my build. And then if we go down here, allows the skill to be to cast multiple times. Each recast has an increased willpower cast. So pretty much this ability gets its cooldown dropped to nothing. And I could just kind of spam my potions, and it honestly, the cost still doesn't get that bad. I mean, I'll use it about 4 or 5 times, and then that's when like my willpower is getting kind of drained. But usually I'm at a mob killing them. And then this one increases attack speed and casting speed after using this skill, which is really good because the whole point of this build is you Aether Jump in with your Plague Burst around you, and you're pretty much autoing. You want a staff for this build because the projectiles bounce, which then spreads your ailments a lot better. So you pretty much want the staff, and then the attack speed is nice because you're constantly autoing while spamming your pet abilities. Like these are what are the cooldowns? 1.5 seconds for all 3 of these abilities. So you're kind of just spamming these abilities while you're in there autoing. That's the whole build with plague around it, so they blow up upon death. And then if we look at this, increases movement speed after completing a teleport, which is pretty good because obviously you're just moving, right? Constantly running through enemies, especially mobs that are easy to kill. Now we're going to look at Hunting Swarm here. So, if you're wondering why I didn't take this that converts the base physical damage, is because my damage is completely converted to toxic damage and rend. So that doesn't matter, which is awesome. That gives me 3 points to spend elsewhere. So I have this one, which arrows shot by summons can pierce targets. This is actually really good because you're spamming that ability, so it's just going through the mobs. And then I have this one, arrows shot by summons explode, which just gives the arrows even more damage. And summons attack speed is increased after using this skill. And then this one increases damage for summons. Now if we look at Feeding Swarm. So I have increased damage for summons, I have increased the number of summons by 1, and then I have increased damage for summons here again, and then I have reduces health for summons, but increases damage, so it's a lot more damage than a basic one. And then this one reduces the number of summons by 1, but I get increased health and damage. So this gives me the extra one, so I instead of having 3, I have 2. This is just a very good mix here. And then if we look at the Liver Mortis here, I have increased damage for summon, and then I have a portion of damage received by you is transmitted to the summon. So this thing is tanky as shit, it never dies. So this is a really good point to grab. I think probably the best one for him to grab. Summon gains an increased chance to inflict ailments on enemies, which is pretty decent, and then this one increased damage for summon. And then if we look at my Plague Burst here, so we have increased area of effect, and then we have increased ailment damage, which is 40%, that's pretty massive. We also have 40% ailment chance score, average damage, so this just increased damage, and then leaves a poisonous cloud when an enemy or friendly summon dies, dealing damage over time. This does so much damage, it's insane. And then we also have increases explosion damage for each ailment stack on a monster. I'm surprised this is only like 1 point. It only costs 1. Maybe the damage isn't as good as it sounds. No idea. But then we look over here, we have increased critical chance, 40%, and then we also have increased critical damage, 25%. So the next thing I'm going to look at real quick here is the passive tree. So as you can see, I started here. For ailment damage, this is pretty much the only route. It's the best route to take, to be honest. There is no other one. So you go down into ailment damage, into pretty much damage spell casting, into material ailment chance, and then 60% ailment chance score, down into spell casting damage, spell cost decrease, spell damage, and then this is unreal, like 50% ailment damage. Yes, you do less damage to abilities that don't deal overtime damage, but that's pretty much all this build is. So you grab this, all this, down into, now at this point you can apply an additional ailment, which is amazing, and then this one again increases your ailment damage and ailment chance. And then into here, this is the only spot to get summon skills in the entire tree, which kind of sucks right now, but I'm sure they'll add more to this tree, I hope, because the level goes to 90 and it honestly seems like the tree is just too small for 90 points, my opinion. So increased damage by summons, health, and toxic damage. This is a huge point. Increased damage by summons. You pretty much just grab all these ones that give you damage, to be honest, for toxic. And then same thing for the health. And then this point is you lose 20% of your health, but your summons take less damage. This seems like a risky point to grab, but it's really not, because you can spam your Livor Mortis' ability, which taunts enemies, so like nothing really is really focused onto you for long periods of time, as long as you're playing the build correctly. And then so you grab all these to make them even tankier, and all your other guys tankier. And then this is a big point too. Enemies that die have a 10% chance to drop green orbs, and picking these orbs up grants you an additional 30% damage as poison damage for 5 seconds. That's a really big point. So definitely grab that. This one is useless. Don't grab this, because this just allows the exact same passive, or passive to happen on your minions, which, I mean, you don't want your minions to die every 2 seconds, so like, useless point. And these are dropping all the time too, so that's good to grab. And then if you go over here, every 2 seconds, enemies in a 7 meter radius gain a poison stack. This is really good, because you're pretty much diving in melee range for a split second, autoing them, and then you pretty much warp out and watch them all blow up. It's great. And then this one pretty much just allows the buff to slow them for 20 seconds, or by 20% for 2 seconds when they're within the radius. So it's a constant slow as long as you're in the radius. So if we go up to here, this point is for like physical damage, conversion into toxic damage, big point. And then these ones just give me like ailment damage, stack duration, material damage. So big points here. And then if you go over into here, you grab max health, 4% damage for each nearby enemy within 4 meters. Helps with the it really helps with the AoE clear. And then up into here, material damage, and then this is just for the 50% material damage. Massive point here, huge damage increase. Can only deal material damage, definitely worth it. And then when you go over into here, you then grab 50% physical damage converted into rend damage. So all your damage is converted into toxic and rend. So you're all dot damage for this build, and that's pretty much it for the tree right here. This is a good place, I thought, to record this build. These are all the primary points. So let's see what level I am here. 64 is when you pretty much have all your needed points. You can be creative and try other stuff, but this is the main core build that you want to get out first before you do anything else with it. And now I'm going to show you guys some gameplay. So if you open up here, I'll show you. So I'm level 64 and I can clear level 76 dungeons right now. So I'll show that. So as you can see, the boss take, yeah, it's a little slower than your average build, but because of the dot damage, the boss gets stunned for a lot longer from getting hit so much. And also, as long as you're spamming your taunt on your pet, then it is all good, because you're gonna pretty much, your pet's gonna hold aggro as long as you dodge those AoE spells. Yeah, it's really safe. You just sit there and auto, like, and you're decently tanky, so it's kind of hard to get one hit. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.